What's up everybody, OT for Tech here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the LG G3 versus Samsung's Galaxy S5 Prime, the Korean edition. So let's go ahead and see how these two stack up against each other, and we'll start with the design of these two phones. The design of these two phones are very different, yet have a couple similarities. Both are made of plastic, and both have removable backs, but that's about as far as alike as these two devices are. The LG G3 carries the same design LG started with placing the buttons on the rear of the phone. This takes some getting used to, but after using it for a while, it just becomes traditional almost or involuntary to think that every device should have this placement. The S5 Prime has not changed in terms of design from the S5. This means it continues to have more of a traditional button placement, with the power button being on the right and the volume rocker being on the left. The tops and bottoms of these phones are also different. The top of the Galaxy S5, you're going to find your 3.5mm headphone jack, your IR blaster, as well as a microphone. And on the LG G3, you're going to find an antenna used for TV viewing, mainly over in Korea because this is a big thing over there. You're also going to find a microphone and an IR blaster as well. The bottoms of the phone are also different. On the bottom of the Galaxy S5, you're going to find your USB 3.0 charging port covered with a little flap, and this is used to keep the phone waterproof, as well as another microphone. On the LG G3, you're going to find the USB 2.0 charging port with the 3.5mm headphone jack and a microphone. The curvature of the LG G3 fits better in the hand, although the plastic back is more slick and it tends to slide more than the Galaxy S5, which has more of a foam-like feeling with its soft texture and dotted pattern. Even though the LG G3 features a larger display coming in at 5.5 inches versus the Galaxy S5 Prime screen at 5.1 inches, it's really not that much larger. It's a bit wider and a tiny bit longer, but thanks to the use of on-screen buttons and its near bezel-less design, it's able to keep that ginormous display housed in such a small package. In fact, it's really not that much bigger than the Galaxy S5 Prime or the Galaxy S5. And on the front of the phones, you can see both have LED notification lights, proximity sensors, ambient light sensors, and speakers up at the top, of course. The S5 carries on Samsung's traditional soft capacitive buttons on the bottom of the display, as well as a physical home button. The LG G3 is heavier than the S5 Prime, but considering you're getting a bigger and larger display, the 0.15 of an ounce honestly does not matter. As I previously stated, both phones have a removable back. Underneath those backs, both phones sport a micro SD card slot, expandable up to 128 gigs. Both have micro SIM card slots, and both also feature removable batteries. In terms of the design, I have to give it to the LG G3 as it is the most comfortable in the hand while bearing a larger display. Which leads me on to the next topic, and that's the displays of these two phones. What makes both of these phones unique is the fact that they are 2 out of 3 phones in the world that sport Quad HD displays. This means that they should be some of the best displays in the market, but at this point we all know that Quad HD is really nothing more than a gimmick, being that there is no app optimization to support that higher resolution, and the fact that the naked untrained eye really cannot see that much more detail than 1080p in a 5-inch screen. But in any case, let's go ahead and see how these displays compare in my non-scientific everyday testing. The S5 Prime sports a Super AMOLED Quad HD display with a PPI of 576. And by the way, just for your information, this is the first Super AMOLED Quad HD display on a smartphone to date. The LG G3, however, features an IPS LCD panel display with a PPI of 538. The difference between these screens won't necessarily be noticeable by the higher or lower number PPI, but rather IPS versus Super AMOLED. The G3 tends to oversaturate colors, more so even than the S5 Prime's display, which is a bit odd considering the AMOLED displays have always been known for their oversaturated colors. The G3 also tends to be much sharper, resulting in haloed text and almost too sharp of images. The S5 has a much better display that gets a bit brighter, and it also gets very deep and dark blacks as well as better overall whites. The S5 has a warmer yet whiter display overall when compared to the LG G3, which tends to be almost a dead grayish color when on solid white screens. In terms of color accuracy, I believe the Prime has a much more accurate color spectrum, and when viewing real-world pictures and having the phones side by side, the majority of people I asked, including my non-biased wife, chose the S5 Prime's display over the G3. As for me personally, I would go with the display on the S5 over the G3 any day, but in any case, you really can't go wrong with either. They're both Quad HDs, and they're going to give you some of the best experience on the market to date. So what's powering these pixel-hungry displays? Well, in terms of internals, the LG G3 features the quad-core Snapdragon 801 processor clocked in at 2.5 GHz with 3 GB of RAM, the Adreno 330 for graphics, and this particular model features 32 GB of onboard storage. The 16 GB model will only feature 2 GB of RAM, so if I were you, I would definitely go with the 32 GB model. The S5 Prime is the first phone to feature the quad-core Snapdragon 805 processor clocked in at 2.5 GHz with 3 GB of RAM. It also features the Adreno 420 for graphics and features 32 GB of onboard storage. And despite the S5 Prime having the higher end specs, it still gets beat in almost every benchmark test. And we're going to go ahead and blame that on the app optimization, just like the Quad HD at this point. The thing is, there's not a lot of apps out there that utilize the Snapdragon 805 or the Adreno 420 that can unlock its full potential. So at this point, maybe the benchmarks will actually be a little bit lower with that Snapdragon 805 than say the Snapdragon 801, which is a more popular processor at this point. In terms of battery, I'm getting much better battery life on the Galaxy S5 Primes despite its smaller 2800 mAh battery versus the LG G3's 3000 mAh battery. I'm getting anywhere between 2.5 to 4 hours of on-screen time with the LG G3 versus my on-screen time of 4 to 7 hours with the S5 Prime. Thankfully, both are Korean models and both have included extra batteries with extra battery chargers, so when my battery goes dead, I just swap it out with the new one that's fully charged. Both phones feature NFC and the LTE-A capability. In terms of specs, it's hard to say as the optimization for the S5 Prime's graphics chip is limited in apps at this point. In fact, I tend to get apps and games that simply will not open or force close when attempting to open. But from the time that I've had to game with a limited selection using the S5 Prime, it keeps up with the LG G3. But again, because of the lack of optimized apps, the G3 tends to load quicker at times versus the Galaxy S5 Prime. This should change in the near future once developers begin to utilize the full power of the Snapdragon 805 and the Adreno 420. Both phones heat up during extensive tasks such as gameplay or 4K recording, but the G3 gets significantly hotter than the S5, especially on the rear of the phone. I've had the screen on the Prime heat up, but only a few times, and that was during the benchmark testing with the brightness turned all the way up and during extensive amounts of gameplay with high frame rate games. In terms of audio, both phones have rear-facing speakers, which is really annoying, but I have to give the edge to the LG G3 as it is a little bit louder and it has better bass. Here's a quick example. Both phones also have really good headphone output, so you don't have to worry about that. And in terms of which has better stock headphones, I would have to go with the LG G3's headphones as they are a little bit more louder and provide a little bit more bass, just like the speaker built onto the phone. Call quality on both phones is excellent, and both phones also offer options to kill background noise and assist with giving you a clearer voice when making and answering phone calls. Which leads me into connectivity. Since these are both Korean models, I really can't say how the US models will be. But I can say that these phones do work on AT&T's network, and I'm getting excellent LTE speeds as well as really good call quality. So let's talk about the software on these two phones. Both phones are running Android 4.4.2 straight out of the box, but both phones also feature their own style skin on top of Android, Samsung having TouchWiz, while LG has its own style skin which can be compared to TouchWiz almost entirely. Even though both companies have stated they have toned down their skins, it seems that LG is the only one that's made more of an effort in terms of improving the design and performance. But don't get me wrong, TouchWiz is great for people that like it, but in terms of fluidity and just overall smoothness, LG's skin is much more smoother and overall much more responsive. Samsung's Magazine, which is more like a skin version of Flipboard that lags, does not compete when you compare it to the overall functional performance and usefulness as LG's smart notifications, which give you reminders to call someone back or miss notifications and information regarding the weather. It's almost like an alternate version to Google Now. Other features include knock code, which works much more consistently than the fingerprint scanner on the S5 or the S5 Prime. You also get gestures with the LG G3 that turn on and turn off the display with a simple double tap. It works well, but I find myself using the physical power button on the rear of the phone more. Therefore, they are about equal when it comes to gesture functionality since I don't really use it for the LG G3. You get Q-Slide apps and multi-window functionality with the LG G3 for multitasking. But in my personal opinion, it's not as good as Samsung's multi-window feature and multitasking capability. LG and Samsung both have their own health apps with a pedometer built in. However, the S5 Prime takes it a step further with a heart rate monitor and being IP67 certified, which allows you to go more places with your phone and not have to worry about water damage or dust. Both are featured packed full of customization options, but at the end of the day, I have to say that LG software is much more fluid and overall runs a lot smoother than TouchWiz, despite the higher end specs on the Prime. So let's talk about availability. The S5 Prime will not be available in the US. Instead, according to the leaks, a Galaxy F will be arriving later this year, which will include the same specs and screen, just with a metal body. If you want this particular model, expect to pay $900 to $1,300 for an imported version. And from what I've been told, it will only run on AT&T's LTE network, not T-Mobile. The G3, however, will be available on all 4 major US carriers. Release times may vary, but Verizon and T-Mobile have said to expect their release versions next month. Expect the price to be around $199 to $299 on contract and $599 to $699 off contract. So finally, let's discuss the cameras of both of these phones. Both phones have excellent cameras that can record video in 4K and take amazing pictures. The G3 features a 13 megapixel camera with LG's advanced OIS, which works excellent and dances circles around Samsung's software OIS. It also features dual LED two-tone flash for better skin tones in low light situations. The S5 features a higher megapixel camera coming in at 16 megapixels, but only has a single LED flash. The Prime's camera app is packed full of settings and features, but I don't intend on going through all these settings and features as they're the same as the Galaxy S5, except with the added option to shoot in widescreen Quad HD. The G3 features a more simplistic camera, which honestly, I prefer. It has minimal settings and shooting modes, but it's just a much easier experience and easier to find what you're looking for. The S5 has live HDR, which is a very useful feature, but the problem is there's just so many features I feel bombarded when I open the camera app. Each phone uses a different focusing system. The S5 uses a ISO focusing system, while the G3 uses a laser to focus. And real-world testing, the G3 may be a tiny bit faster, but it's hardly noticeable. The only true benefit in my opinion of the laser focus is low lit situations. Low light focusing is amazing with the LG G3. It's very fast, and generally it hits the subject every time. I believe the G3 definitely has the better camera, especially in low light situations, when compared to the Galaxy S5 Prime. But in any case, I took some sample images and videos, and I will let you guys decide on your own. So sit back and enjoy. What's up guys, so we've come to the end of the video and we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here with the front facing camera as we do usually. and they're both 2.1 megapixel front-facing cameras, but as you can see, the detail and overall the color tones are much better on the G3 versus the S5 Prime. The S5 Prime is a little bit oversaturated and just much warmer when it comes to the front-facing camera, but volume is good on the S5 and the G3, so you shouldn't have any problems with audio. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. Make sure you follow me on all my social media connections. Leave me a comment and let me know what I missed, if I did good, if I did bad. I want to know your feedback. And of course, as always, guys, thank you for watching and all your support.